Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We are excited to have our new Power Platform team lead, Keith Sayer, who will be presenting on what is Power Platform and why should I care? I know you're all eager to get started with this presentation, so before we begin, as a reminder, we are recording this webinar and we will be posting it to our on-demand webinar library for you to review again and share with anyone. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type them into the question box and we will answer them at the end of our session during our Q&A. Now I'm going to turn it over to Keith to kick off our presentation.
Thanks, Joe, and welcome to everyone to the presentation today. As Joe mentioned, I am the new Power Platform team lead here at Innovia Consulting. We've been putting together a team to engage with all these tools and work with you to do even more with your Microsoft stack. So it's been a very exciting time here as we've been tooling up and making different applications and different dashboards and all the different components of Power Platform, which I'll get into during our presentation. Just a little bit about me. I started at Innovia in the marketing department. I came to that role after having worked with a lot of marketing automation platforms. So that's been sort of the path into Power Platform for me, is really focusing on automating marketing through the tools that they have on that side. And then since we are a Microsoft partner, that naturally led into looking at the solutions that Microsoft was offering, one of which was Power Automate, which we'll mention during this presentation. And then obviously with the analytical side, that got me into Power BI. So personally, I've worked in roles in industries like transportation, healthcare, and the higher education industry. But no matter what I've done before, a common theme in that has been data and working with data in different capacities. So that's just a little bit about me. Before we get too far into it, I'd like to invite you, if you're so willing, to go to the little box in the side of your screen, the Go to Webinar box, and go ahead and use the raise hand function if you have used Power Platform before, or it's part of your company's tech stack today. Okay, I'm seeing a couple. Yep. Sounds good. And then, so go ahead and now raise your hand if you are brand new to Power Platform. This is kind of the first time you've sort of got into it. You're trying to learn about what's involved. Okay. Perfect. So we got actually a pretty good mix of people who are familiar as well as people who are brand new. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to start with the first part of our question: what is the Power Platform? That's where we're going to go through the different tools. I'm going to kind of give you an overview of what each one is intended to do, what it's good for, and that kind of thing. And then we'll go into the why should you care. That's the examples and explanations for why we developed the different things that we developed. And that will kind of give you some practical examples to kind of get your brain started thinking about what you can do with Power Platform for your business. And then we'll end things off with how to get started, how Innovia can help you, as well as the Q&A section. So as we go, feel free to add any questions. We'll get to those at the end of the presentation. So what is the Power Platform? So it's actually 4 different components that all work together, and they all have sort of in common this sense of a low code application. So these tools are intended to help you do more in your business without necessarily getting into the heavy development side. So there are 4 different tools. So I'll kind of walk through each and what they are. So the first is Power BI. And so that's all about business analytics. Power BI lets you make reports, visualize your data, connect to all sorts of different data sources to pull that all in. And then you'll be able to produce dashboards and share them around your company so that people can visualize the data, connect the dots. Oh, it looks like my screen is not advancing. Let me try resharing my screen. All right, let me know. You should be seeing the Microsoft Power Platform and Power BI and Business Analytics. And then the next part of the Power Platform is called Power Apps. And that is all about creating apps that your business can use to work with your data and make it low code. So the real advantage of this is to be able to really rapidly iterate on your ideas. Just because there's a lot of the heavy lifting is taken care of by Microsoft when you're developing a Power App. And so it's a much faster process than doing a straight up hard coding. And it lets people who are not developers interact with the development process. So it's a very cool thing to really help you solve specific problems that you're facing in your business and connect to your data. The next one is called Power Automate, and this used to be called Microsoft Flow. It's the same product, it just has a different name to fit in with the Power Platform. And it's all about low-code automation. So you can build logic-based rules that have conditions and triggers and actions, and they can be automatically fired or triggered on demand, as well as scheduled. So, and the really cool thing about this is it's not just within a single system. Power Automate connects to hundreds of different systems, and it actually allows you to, say, have a trigger in one place that creates an action in another place, a completely different system. So that's really the cool advantage of Power Automate. And then finally, we have Power Virtual Agents. That's the fourth product in the stack, and that allows you to make self-service chat agents that are, AI driven, and you can set up different topics and connect it to the information that your customers, your employees, or anyone would want to get to, and they can interact with that in a chat format. So it's a really cool application for communications. So all four of those products together are what is called the Power Platform. And what binds them together as sort of the database that connects them all is something called Dataverse. So Dataverse, it used to be known as the Common Data Service. Think of it as the underlying database that connects your Power Apps, things like Dynamics 365 Sales, and many of your other business applications through Microsoft. It's built as a structured table database, and Microsoft has put it together based on what's called the Common Data Model. And the Common Data Model is a set of entities, essentially, a set of tables that connect together that most businesses use in some capacity. And it's sort of a way to standardize how tables are designed. So Dataverse is sort of what's behind a lot of what we're doing in the Power Platform. So as you can see, it really forms the basis for things like D365 sales, customer engagement and marketing, those types of applications, as well as all of our Power Platform, things like model-driven apps, which we'll get into a little bit in just a minute, as well as Customer Voice, which is a new survey product from Microsoft that we've been kind of talking about here at Innovia and pushing that as well. So if you're wanting to survey your customers, your employees, or anyone, that's a great way to do that, and it saves all the information in the Dataverse. So I won't get into too much of Dataverse, but just kind of remember that it's the thing behind what we're talking about. It's where that data is being saved on Microsoft's end. So this is just a table that shows you how it looks within the cloud system. So you can see those are sort of an example of the standard tables that you can find, things like accounts, addresses, appointments, attachments, things like that. So that is what Dataverse is, and we will interact with it in many ways with our Power Platform applications. So now that we've taken a look at sort of the high-end view of each of the whole four products and all of the Microsoft Power Platform, let's go into each individual one, starting with Power BI. And as I said, that it's all about business analytics. So Power BI, the BI stands for business intelligence. And it's a complete platform that lets you connect with hundreds of different services, including Business Central, CRM, and Dataverse, as well as things like SQL databases, Azure SQL databases, you know, even Excel, something as simple as that, can be connected up with the Power BI service. And the cool thing is if you can't find something that works in your specific application, you can create custom connectors. It's a fairly straightforward process for a developer to put one of those together for you. One of the cool things about Power BI is, just like with the Business Central community, to where you can kind of tap into the community knowledge and ask questions. Power BI has a massive community of data analysts and designers out there, and you can go on to the forums, you can ask your question, anything that you would want to know. So that's a really big advantage of it as well. Whoops, let's go back. So let's touch on just briefly how data flows through Power BI. And there are two different people who interact with Power BI. There's your report builders, who make the reports that people are actually consuming, and they interact with Power BI through all the stuff on the left. So the base data is going to be from whatever system you're pulling that data from. That can be Business Central again, CRM, Excel, any of those things that are part of that. So that's sort of the source of the data. The connector is, think of it as the bridge between those systems and Power BI. So again, it can be built in, the standard connectors, which actually cover quite a few things, or a custom one that you've developed if that's required for what you're trying to do. Then you use something called the Power BI query editor, and essentially think of that as just a set of instructions for how to transform your data to make it usable in a visualization. So it can be things like cleaning up bad entries. It could be things like categorizing, pivoting and unpivoting, all sorts of things like that you need to do to get the visualizations that you want. Basically, you just kind of run it through once. It saves a set of instructions, and anytime your data changes, it'll run those same queries and transform your data to a format that can be used in Power BI. Then your report builder builds your report in the desktop version of Power BI. They can connect to the data, through any of these connectors. It has a Power Query editor that gets it to where it needs to go. And then they put together visualizations, which are the smaller, graphics and tables and things to show your data. And then they create reports and dashboards from that. Let's kind of talk a little bit about the components. The first is just your data itself. The data set is it's the actual collection of data that your Power BI service is using. So it's think of it like the actual tables that are behind the report. So there's two different forms for that. There's the imported data model, and then there's a direct query data model. So in an imported data model, it's basically going to take the data from your sources, and then it's going to copy it to a location within Power BI, and that really allows it to rapidly put in new queries, create new visualizations, and have really strong performance. So that's really the advantage of the imported data model. Direct query is more of a pass-through, so your data set is, again, just sort of a set of instructions. And then what happens is each individual visualization will send a query to your base data source and get that information back sort of on the fly. That can be a little bit slower depending on where you're sending that. So that's sort of the disadvantage of direct query. Essentially, imported data will give you better performance, and direct query will ensure that your Power BI files are never too large because they're not really copying anything. The next part of the components of Power BI, we're sort of moving from the bottom all the way up. Think about in the hierarchy. So this is the visualizations. So that's actually going to graphically represent the data that you've brought in and that you've manipulated within your Power Query. There's all sorts of visualizations. I mean, there's a ton that are built in as soon as you open that program for the first time. But there's also a lot that can be downloaded in addition, as well as you can create custom visualizations as well through coding if you can't find something that quite meets your needs. So there's a lot of flexibility with that. So there's things like tree maps, pie charts, line charts. You can use a literal geographic map as well as historical comparisons. All those visualizations that you want to see together are put together into what Power BI calls a report. So the report is essentially, it's going to have a single data set and you can put as many pages as you want. And you can slice and dice that data, put together visualizations that really are going for what you're trying to visualize. So what you're seeing is an example of like a financial dashboard. It has revenue over time as well as some all up. These are like essentially like dashboard numbers telling us where we are at this very moment. But there's any number of things that you can do with that. Finally, there's a dashboard, and think of that as sort of the one layer up from a report. You can take visualizations or even just whole pages from any number of reports, put them together as tiles, and then they can all be viewed in a single page format. The cool thing is that each of these visualizations, if there's something that you want to know more about, you can click it and it'll take you right to the more exhaustive report that you've built. So this is really nice for kind of making a landing page for the people who need to consume your data. So that's sort of a really good application of a dashboard. It also allows you to do some real-time streaming data sets, but that's a much bigger topic and it will take some customization and some API know-how to do, but just letting you know that that's a possibility there. The next part of our Power Platform is the Power Apps. As I said, that's all about app development, and it's all low code and no code customization that lets both your developers and non-developers work together to push applications out that will solve sort of the needs that you have in your company. Again, it works just like Power BI in a lot of ways, that there's a ton of built-in connectors as well as custom connectors if what you have, if your business need isn't met by what's there. So it will seamlessly integrate also with Power Automate. So we'll see that in just a little bit when we get into Power Automate, but essentially you make a button that triggers a flow, and then you can do all sorts of cool stuff with that. There's 3 different types of Power Apps. The first is called a Canvas app. It's really designed to work on a mobile device. You can also design it for like a tablet as well. It's basically allowing you to really make the experience exactly what you want. So every pixel is editable, like you can change the sizing of this. You can make all the different objects appear exactly how you want. The buttons can be programmed to do exactly what you're after. So it has a lot of control, and it's obviously mobile first. So that's all taken care of for you. So what's really cool about Canvas apps is it lets you solve your business problems that you don't really want to handle in front of a PC. So one of the examples is collecting shop floor data. The app that you're seeing there is going to allow you to click into a production order and post output to it. You can also do things with cameras since it's a mobile device, as well as easily access your data when you can get to it from anywhere really. The next type of app is something called a model-driven app. It's best to it is built to work with the Dataverse, so that's really the best application of a model-driven app. It allows you to customize which objects are shown in the app, as well as how and when and what sort of filters are included, and all that stuff. So it creates a custom experience for your team that's very similar in many ways to if you've used Dynamics 365 Sales or any of those types of products. As you can see at the bottom, it really shares a lot in common with those products. So if you've always wanted to create sort of a way for your team to get into information and manipulate it or see things specifically, this is really the thing for you. Now, portals are a really cool addition to the Power Apps, suite, and they allow you to essentially make websites that your customers, your employees, and really anyone can access. So it allows you to control the level of access different security groups have. People can actually log in with basically any Microsoft account, and it will add them to your sort of Dataverse collection of data. And that's a really cool thing because you can then say, okay, so I want people who have logged in to be able to pull information about, for example, any orders that they have open at the moment. If they have bills that are paid, invoices within the Dataverse system, allow them to see that as well. You can also do things that are public facing, like a sort of like a wiki. You can even do a blog on these portal apps if you're so inclined. And there's just a lot of options to really make this a cool experience for both your internal teams and people outside your organization. Finally, because we will skip over, I think, Power Virtual Agents in this specific webinar, but so our last part that we're gonna be covering today is called Power Automate, and that's all about handling your repetitive tasks through automation. So Power Automate allows you to automate your processes across platforms. So that's what's really unique about it, is to be able to, for instance, have something in Business Central that affects something in SharePoint, or have something that happens in Twitter affect your CRM. There could be any number of cool crossover applications. And there are really hundreds and hundreds of different connectors out there, and it's growing all the time. So this is just a brief, just a screenshot just to show you about how vast the amount of connectors are out there. So this is just a single page. This goes on and on. I mean, I just took a quick snapshot of this. So and again, just like Power Apps, if the connector you want isn't there, you can create it, as well as if you need to access on-prem data, there is a data gateway service that can also be done. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do to get this all working the way that you need it to. So there are different types of cloud flows. The first is an automated cloud flow. This is it's probably the most common type. It triggers automatically based on a trigger that's from one of those connectors we talked about. So that could be something that happens in Dataverse, like a new record is created, when a row is added, modified, or deleted, when an action is performed within a particular table. Within Business Central, you can do things like have a flow run when an approval request is created, or when a new master record is created. SharePoint, you can do things when files are uploaded, changed, or modified in SharePoint. Twitter, as I said, when a tweet is posted with a particular handle, or even your specific business handle, you can do something with that. All sorts of different triggers out there. What's cool about an automated flow is there's no user input required. You define in advance what you want to happen, and it occurs anytime that trigger occurs. The next type is an instant and scheduled cloud flow. As opposed to an automated, these are basically set by the user, and the time when it's run is set by you. So it will run on demand. It can either be run on a schedule. So you can say, okay, so I want it to go at this time, or delay, or set this recurrence, or anything like that. And then there's also the instant one, and that's essentially a button. So it's saying, hey, I want this flow to run whenever the user says go. So that can be a button, that can be integrated into Power Apps, like I said. So that Canvas app experience can have a button that triggers a Power Automate flow. And what's really cool is this is sort of coming together now. There's a lot of cool stuff going on with integrating between different products. So things like Power BI and customer voice and things like that can be integrated here with Power Automate to do even more cool stuff. The next type is called desktop flows. And what that is actually a robotic process automation app. So it actually just runs on your Windows system. And it takes commands from the flow and executes them on the system. So you can do all sorts of things that you can't really do on a cloud flow, but it's more of a machine-based action. So what's cool with that is you can use the built-in recorder to carry out your actions and then pre-build a desktop flow for you based on what you've done. So that's a really cool shortcut. There are hundreds of different local commands, and it lets you connect with data that maybe can't quite get to the cloud yet or something like that. The really cool thing about desktop flows is you can kind of try it out today just by downloading it on Windows 10. You can't do everything that you can on a licensed version, but you can play with it, get a little feel for how it works. The best place to find that is in the Windows Store on your Windows 10 device. AI Builder, this is pretty cool stuff. We won't spend a ton of time on it because it's a really big topic. Basically, you can make your own AI models within the Power Platform. So some of the examples you can do are, scanning the document with the Power App, attach it to a purchase order in Business Central. You can recognize items off a production line and match to production orders. You can analyze customer feedback and determine the sentiment level of that and provide recommendations to escalate the feedback in the organization. That's something that's actually, if you do any more reading or you check it out any of our resources about customer voice, that's something that's sort of part of that as well. So yeah, all sorts of AI cool stuff you can do with the AI Builder. Again, it's a huge topic, so we won't spend a ton of time on that one. Here's what you may be wanting to know about Business Central specifically with Power Automate. These are some of the triggers that are out there as well as the actions. So the triggers that I've seen for Business Central today have essentially been approval processes. So on all sorts of different objects, when you start an approval process, that can be a trigger to create a Power Automate flow. There's actually a whole approval module within Power Automate Flow that really provides a nice experience for you for having all your approval requests together, being able to see the history and all that cool stuff. So it's a really nice experience for the user. Another trigger type is when records are created, modified, or deleted. So if there's a new customer, if you've changed the address of a vendor, any of those kind of things can be triggers from Business Central. Then on the other side, actions are what you can actually do within Business Central based on a flow. And again, like I said, the trigger can come from somewhere else. So this could be something that happened, in your CRM system or perhaps in Outlook that can trigger something to occur within Business Central. So for example, to create, update, or delete a record, to get a record, which is essentially just to say, hey, I want this record ID, give me everything you know about it. And then you can then use that in Power Automate Flow for other stuff, as well as execute actions. So a lot of that is pre-configured or custom coded actions within Business Central. One of the most common is with the approval workflows. That's actually telling it, hey, this record is approved, is an action that can be triggered. So that's just sort of a sampling of what you can do with Power Automate in Business Central flows. But now let's move into some real life examples. And I think this is going to be kind of a fun part of the presentation. So the first one I want to talk about a little bit, and you can see this is the only one that I don't really have a demo for because it's sort of something that occurred in the past. This is a customer service survey that Innovia Consulting actually completed. And we built the whole thing basically in the Power Automate service. So we used Microsoft Forms to build a satisfaction survey. We built out all the questions, and then we built the flow that will essentially handle things like automated email follow-up. So it's going to send the email back to people who completed that, let them know. It's going to send notifications to our internal people who need to know what's going on with this survey, that there's somebody who's new had submitted something, as well as putting it into, you see the create item actions at the end. That's actually putting it into a SharePoint list, and that's what we were able to pull from to have a updated Power BI report based on our surveys. So really cool. You can build this entire thing within the Power Platform. And you can actually learn much more about this. I'm going to go into much more detail about this at the free Dynamics Con event in September. So if you haven't signed up for that, be sure to do that. It's going to be pretty cool. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about how this whole use case was done and how you can do it yourself. All right, let's take a little bit of a look at these approvals that we've talked about. So I'm over here in Business Central, and as you can see, there's a request approval thing here on the purchase order. I'm just using this as an example. There are many different record types that can have an approval process tied to them. So what's cool is under request approval, you can see it actually has a link to flows. So you can see the flows that are associated with this, or create a new one on the fly. In this case, I've already created one, and I've actually already sent an approval request. You can see that this purchase order has a pending approval status right now. So how are we going to actually get that thing approved? So as you can see in this email box, I've received a request from Microsoft Flow. It's saying, hey, we've requested an approval for a Dynamics 365 Business Central purchase order. It's telling me the number, how much it is, what the vendor is, and it's asking me if I approve of this purchase order. And so you can format this any way you want. What's cool about the flow is you can customize it and be like, okay, so I want to show purchase order. I want to say who asked for this, and in this note here, I want to say the totals, anything that's on that record we can pull into this message. So this is just an example of a few different fields that can be grabbed. So let's say I'm good with that. I'm going to hit approve. It's going to open up my approval portal here, and I've got to just say approve, reject, or reassign to someone else if I don't want to do the approval for that. I can put in some comments. I can say, looks good, go for it, and confirm my approval there. Now, what's cool is this is an example of the portal for approvals that you get when you do it this way. And you can see if I had more approvals, they would actually be listed here, and I could act on them. So you can see I've got my history, I've got the ones that I've sent, I've got both the received and sent history that we can review. So this is a really great tool to keep track of all that cool stuff. And as you can see, I got a notification that Keith Sayre has approved my purchase order for all that stuff, and his comments were, looks good, go for it. And back in Business Central, if we just refresh our page, it should show that it has been approved. Yep, we've now been released, so that's good to go. So as you can see, that's sort of a nice experience, and this is the flow that goes into that. So this is our sandbox purchase order approvals. As you can see, there's a few tests that I was running that have been canceled. So this is just it. When it's requested, we get the information. We start our approval process. It's going to send it to that email address. It's going to have all this stuff. We can put a link to the item here. That's sort of a more advanced thing to kind of put together programmatically. But that's something cool that we can do. And then based on whether it's going to be approved or not, it's going to execute different actions in Business Central and let the person know what happened. So really cool stuff, I think. So that's kind of a very quick rundown of approvals. That's something that we'll actually be covering in a little bit more detail at the Power Automate workshop next week. So if you're still interested in signing up for that, check that out on our website. I wanted to show you a Power App, and this one's just kind of more fun. So let's get out of this. So this is a tiny little app that I made for marketing purposes for the most part. So it allows me to take a photo here, and then I'm just going to name it. I'm going to say Keith, and hit continue. Whoops. Let's actually just restart the app because it has some stuff from the last time. No problem. It was sort of in a testing mode. So we'll try that again, and we'll do Keith. There we go, perfect. So we can put in the message, we can say testing our Power App marketing app. I'm just gonna post this to Twitter for now. Now what's cool about this app is it's not only gonna do to the network that we've selected, or both. If we did both, it would send it to both. But it's actually also gonna send it to SharePoint as well. It's gonna save this for our reference. It's going to a specific folder that I've defined within the marketing documents. And there it is right on SharePoint. And then if we go over here, I actually did this before the webinar, you may have seen that. And there we go, there's our new tweet, as well as our hashtags and all the stuff that we put in there. That's just a very, very simple example, I think, but it's kind of a fun thing. I mean, the thing that I see this being particularly useful for is if you're like at an in-person conference or something like that, you can take a photo, put a message on it, and you can send it out to your social network as well as save it to your internal documents in the same action. So that's sort of an example of how that does. And this slide is actually going to show you. So remember how I mentioned that instant Power Automate flows can be triggered from a button within a Power App? That's exactly what we did in this app. So you click send, it's going to trigger a flow from Power Apps, creating the file. It's going to check if we want to tweet, and if so, we're going to tweet it. If we want to go on LinkedIn, it's going to send it to LinkedIn, and then it's going to send back the link to the SharePoint file that we got to. So very cool stuff. So yeah, so that is basically the end of the presentation. I wanted to kind of go over some of the key takeaways so you can kind of have an idea of what's possible, what you should be thinking about with each of these products. So Power BI is really useful anytime you need reporting or you need to see your business metrics better. It's really an engine to make data-driven decisions is really the intention behind what you can do with Power BI. So you can make dashboards, you can make reports, you bring visibility to the organization in many ways, and make it fast and repeatable. Power Apps lets you access your data more efficiently and effectively so you can do your work faster. So, if you need to do something on the go, you can do that with the Canvas app. You need better access to your data. You can do a model-driven app for your specific use. If you want customers or anyone to access anything in your database, you can make a portal. Lots of really cool things you can do with Power Apps. And again, Power Automate takes the repetitive manual tasks out of the equation. You can automate things within a single system. You can do, essentially workflows within, say, for example, Business Central. If you want something to happen when something else occurs, you can set those up. As long as the triggers and actions that you want are included, as well as do things cross systems, which is really, really cool. I wanted to close with just kind of briefly mentioning a little bit of how we can help you at Innovia. So some of the things that we've got that we can do are sort of our standard Power BI reports and dashboards. That's something that we can put together for you. As well as customized ones based on if you have a specific thing you want to see or you have an idea and you want to execute on it, we can help you do that. We can also do training and help using Power BI. And we can help you develop the pages and web services in BC that you need within Power BI if those are not there by default based on your use case. We can also help you with Power App development and Power Automate approvals. And more. So if you have any ideas with what you want to do with the Power Platform, don't really know where to start, we can help you with that. So I just wanted to kind of mention that and kind of close it out from there. So I guess at this point, I'm going to hand it back over to Joe, and he's going to check to see if there were any questions that came through that I can answer for you.
Thanks, Keith. There are a couple questions here. The first
Okay.
one is, what licensing do I need with Power BI?
Okay. So I actually, let me find it. There's actually a slide that we skipped over. There it is. That kind of goes through this. So Power BI, you can actually get started with it for free and kind of play around with the different things with it. The catch is you can only really do things on the desktop version, and you can't really share your reports with anyone. So it's really more for evaluation purposes, but you can do a lot of the things that you can do in the license version, just to kind of play around with what's possible. So there is a free version that you can get. You can just go to Power BI, just search for it in your search engine and find it that way. But for licensing, sort of the entry level is the Power BI Pro license, and that's just $9.99 a month per user. And that allows you to have shared workspaces, allows you to collaborate, allows you to share what you've created, create apps within your organization so that people can view all the reports that you've put together for them. It also lets you have a much higher capacity than what you'd get with the free version. When you're going up to premium, that's $20 per user per month. There's really only a few reasons why you might want to do that. The first is if you need a very, very high capacity for your data. I haven't really run into anyone yet who's in that specific case. But it's certainly possible with a large amount of data that you could need the capacity of Power BI Premium. There's also something called paginated reports from Power BI Premium. That's sort of a different approach to reporting that is useful in many cases. It lets you kind of make like PDF printouts of data and things like that. You also do have the option, and this is kind of weird, you can set up a workspace with Power BI Premium for $5,000 per month. That's a single workspace. The advantage of that is you don't need to license all of your users. So you kind of have to do the calculus between how many users, how many workspaces you need, and then kind of compare it with the pricing. But most people, I think, will want to do Power BI Pro. Lets you kind of make unlimited number of shared workspaces. It's just that all of your users have to be licensed. All
Okay.
right. We have
Okay.
another question?
We do. We have one here. How can I get started?
Oh, yeah, I did kind of mention all the things that we could do to help you out with Innovia Consulting. But to get started with any of that, your first point of contact is going to be your customer engagement representative at Innovia. They can help guide the way towards what you need to get to the products that you're interested in, and they can help you connect with my team for if you need any of our assistance as well.
Cool.
And if you don't have one, feel free to just reach out to info@innovia.com.
Okay. And what if the data I need isn't in the standard APIs with Business Central?
So that's really the cool thing with Power BI and Business Central. It's actually a very, very, very straightforward process for one of our developers to just kind of put together a short little extension that will add any web services that are not already present by default. So if you're working with your data, you're like, hey, there's this field that just isn't on any of these standard web services or APIs. We can put together one for you that will have what you need to get the report that you need done. And that's, it's a fairly straightforward process. Just reach out to your customer engagement rep. We'll get you all squared away.
Cool. We have one more.
Yeah.
Are there any recommended resources for free training on Power BI?
Yeah. So one of the cool things about all of the Microsoft products is there's a resource out there called Microsoft Learn. It's put on by the documentation group from Microsoft. So if you just search for Microsoft Learn in your search engine, you'll find it. And they have all sorts of sort of entry-level training on, you know, Power BI, you know, all sorts of other products as well. So that's a good free option for you. You can also check out any of the webinars that we have at Innovia in our on-demand webinar library. There's a few Power BI ones in there, so you might check that out. If you're interested in more hands-on help with that, though, we do have a Power BI workshop scheduled in the near future as well. You can sign up for that, and that is a paid engagement, but it's very competitively priced. And then that lets you kind of work with us sort of one-on-one and kind of ask any questions that come up, and we'll kind of lead you through the process.
Well, that looks like all the questions we have for today. Please feel free to contact Keith or one of his team members at Innovia with any additional questions you may have. I want to thank Keith for presenting today, and everyone on today's webinar, or if you're watching on demand, we thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks everyone for joining us and for the chance to share a little bit about the platform. We're really excited about all the potential that we can do here.
And just as a reminder, we have new training workshops for you and your team members to attend. Visit our training workshop page at innovia.com/workshops for more information and to register for the training workshop that fits your role. We also have more webinars coming up. Tomorrow we have one of our partners, Nectronic, presenting on Supercharge Your Business Central with an Integrated Finite Capacity Scheduler, or VAPS. And next Tuesday afternoon, take some time out to join us to meet our support squad. The team will be sharing a little bit about themselves, their love for what they do best, and answer your pressing questions. So check out our website for more of our upcoming events, and that's innovia.com/events. And don't forget to check out our Innovia Conversation podcast with hosts Steve Waltz and Jeff Pergolski. You can find out about all the different podcast platforms to listen to them on our podcast page. That's innovia.com/podcast. While you're there, check out our podcast library and be sure to subscribe to receive notifications when new episodes air. And fall is approaching, and that means conference time. Check out our conference page at innovia.com/conferences to learn more about all the conferences we'll be attending this fall. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at another Innovia webinar. Thank you, Keith.
Thanks, Joe.